Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Jurassic Zoological Garden, and today we are building a biodome habitat for the Pyroraptor. So let's get started. Building a biodome in this zoo was actually not on my bucket list. This was quite a spontaneous decision, but I have to say that I do really like the outcome, and you can tell that I've built quite a large biodome, but in this episode we are only going to actually build the interior for one side of the biodome, because the other side will be for a different dinosaur or reptile that will be added in the next episode. And looking at the next expansion pack that we are getting, the rebirth expansion pack, you can maybe guess what will be on the other side of the biodome. And also this expansion pack was basically the idea to create the biodome, or let's better say, thinking about what dinosaur I could add from this pack led me to the idea of this biodome. And I also wanted to create a biodome that is split in half, so one half will be the Pyroraptor that we are building right now, and the second half will be a little bit secret for now, and you will see the result in the next episode. But for this one I actually have to wait for the rebirth pack to be released, because I will need one of those dinosaurs. For this biodome, my idea firstly was to have like a very dry, almost like desert type biodome, but I quickly changed my mind and went more for a tropical, or let's say better, semi-tropical environment. I feel like this would also really fit. I was thinking about the desert vibe or the jungle vibe, because this would both make sense to have like in a separate area that is the biodome, as we are building in a temperate style zoo. I feel like the biodome would need some sort of environment that does not necessarily work super well in a temperate biome. And I decided on the tropical one, though the habitat for the Pyroraptor is not like overly tropical. I would say maybe like semi-tropical. I will see what I will do with the second half. Maybe this will be even more tropical, but I will see in the next episode. But I'm kind of keeping it a secret for now. And what I wanted to do for this biodome was, of course, that the guests will be able to actually pass through the biodome. This is not actually workable, so the guests will not actually be able to walk through this biodome, but we're just keeping the illusion of it that this works. And what I did so that the guests can actually enter the biodome is I didn't build a custom like door, but I used the little hack, let's say. So you can basically build this ride and build the track through the biodome itself, and then it will create the doors, and then you can later delete the track. Only like this tiny little bit that is sticking out right at the door will stay, but the rest of the track you can completely delete, and then you will have this really secure door that would also actually open if you go in there by yourself. But unfortunately in this game we cannot walk over like stairs and stuff like that, so unfortunately you are not able to actually walk through there, which is kind of a pity, because in Planet Zoo we were able to also walk over stairs in the ego perspective, but in this game we unfortunately cannot. So this is not really usable, but you could totally do this completely on ground level, and then you would be able to actually walk through there. But I decided to go with a raised like walkway where the guests can walk around, and also have a glass floor, so they can also look down through the glass and see the dinosaurs moving around underneath them. I wanted to have it a little bit raised, as we are having the Pyroraptor in there, and I don't really want the Pyroraptor to get too close to the actual barrier that is separating the guests from the dinosaur, as I feel like this might not be the best idea. So I definitely wanted to create a raised platform so the guests are definitely safe, and I feel like this would also give a much better view. Also for the second half of this will also make quite a lot of sense, so that the next dinosaur will also be able to go underneath the walkway. So for the corners of the walkway, I actually kind of went with the lazy way and made these out of rock, which would technically be for rocks, so that the guests can like rock in there. I could have made something where it would still be open and more cohesive with the rest of the walkway, but this would probably be quite a headache to build, so I feel like just going with rocks was the easiest way. And also I feel like in the end it does give a little bit more variety for the walkway itself. You will later see me build also kind of basically the roof of these corners, and there will be some small windows with fencing in there so they can also see through the rocks and into the habitat. I feel like this gives it also this natural look, and it definitely saved myself some headaches to try to find out a way on how to make these corners like really nice, as we don't really have like the most perfect pieces for this. So I feel like this was definitely the way to go. And what else I wanted to do for this habitat, I wanted to have quite a lot of water actually. The Pyroraptor does require also deep water. Unfortunately, we cannot place deep water into the aviaries or biodome, which is also kind of a pity, but I feel like this will still work. I don't really care too much about the needs of the dinosaurs, if I'm honest. I'm try to just look out for it to find out what I can build or what I should use, but I'm not paying too much attention to it, so it's not like super realistic. But I feel like this came out quite well. I wanted to have it like semi-tropical and with quite a lot of water. And I also wanted to create somewhat of a really shallow waterfall where the water would be like in this little pool at the top, and then over some like natural sort of stairs and flow down. And then on the other side of this biodome, the water would like collect there and will be like placed back into the cycle and then again put into the habitat. Maybe I will also connect the water to the water area also in the different biodome. For now, I only have a rock wall to kind of separate the areas. This will also be made a little bit nicer when I'm building the second half of it, so I can still change it, and maybe I will connect both body of waters together so it makes sense and everything will be just one cycle basically. Even though I'm building a more of a tropical biome, I didn't really want to use the tropical rocks, as I feel like I've used them so much in the zoo already. I just wanted to give it a little bit of a twist and use different rocks, and I would have loved like almost grayish rocks to use in there, but unfortunately we don't have gray or almost black rocks. I would have totally loved to use these. We only have like the temperate rock or the tiger rock, which are both more of a light gray, so I'm definitely missing like a dark gray rock or maybe a rock that we can recolor. But in the end, I decided on the desert rocks. When I was looking for inspiration, I also saw a picture of a habitat, or maybe it was also some sort of aviary or biodome. I could not quite tell from the picture, but it also was like a tropical biome, and they also use more of like light beige or brownish rocks, so I feel like this could also work, and in the end I do actually like the result. And what I did, I basically, as always, used like a bunch of rocks to kind of lay out the habitat and to build some structure. And I could already work around like the body of water that we have, then also the stone piles that we have that work as the corners of the walkway, and then on like areas where there are slopes in the terrain, I also try to use some rocks, so they basically almost make like little natural stairs so that they can hold back the dirt and the earth that is there, so it kind of makes sense to place some really flat rocks there. And so I kind of worked around all of that and then placed down my little group of small rocks with a little bit of foliage in between, as I always do, as I just totally love this technique, and it already gives so much structure, so much detail, and also with this little bit of foliage it does already take off like quite a lot of work for me later. and almost gives me like again an idea on how to proceed with the whole layout. And that what I wanted to do is I used again a bunch of fallen logs and broken trees, and I placed them all around the habitat. I also really wanted to have some of them almost look like a little bridge over the water. And then I placed down a few of the smaller ones all around the whole habitat. And there's also this one really big broken tree that is pretty much at the very bottom of the trees tab. And I also love to use these in like more of a open area where I'm not quite sure what to do with it, as this kind of serves like a little island that I can use to build around with foliage and other rocks, and to just fill out this really big open space. And since we are building a semi-tropical biome, I definitely wanted to use these trees that already have some climbing plants on them. I actually do really like them, and they totally give off this tropical vibe that I was trying to go for. So I placed that around all over the habitat, and also really close to the rock barrier. So in some areas it will look like the plants are actually climbing on the rocks. There were also some little ledges on the rock wall where I placed down some ferns, so technically there would be some plants growing on top of the actual rock wall. And for the foliage, I was a little bit lazy, I have to say. So I did actually use one of the foliage brushes, like quite lightly. I think it was like the low shrubbery brush or something like that, to kind of fill in those areas, as I wanted to have this relatively lush, and I do struggle with these really big open areas. I feel like the brush was quite a good idea to place down some foliage already in there, to give like the first base, and then refine everything with the singular foliage pieces that I am using. And I did use the very big grass piece all around there. I feel like especially around water it does look quite well, and I am so extremely excited for the new grass piece that we will be getting with the rebirth expansion. I know there's like a ton of building pieces, and I was looking through them. Unfortunately, barely any foliage. I believe the grass might even be the only foliage piece that we are getting, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, I like the new pieces that we will be getting, but I would have loved a little bit more foliage. But I'm really stoked about the grass piece that we are getting. I'm really excited to use this, and I was almost tempted to wait for with this build till we get the grass piece, but I have to build something for today's episode, so I still built this, but I think I will use the grass piece with the next habitat. I will be super excited. I am hoping that it's similar to the buffalo grass that we had in Planet Zoo, because if so, this will be my number one grass piece that I will use everywhere. So you will totally see this piece in every single episode. Maybe not if I'm building like a desert biome, but anything else I will totally use this all over the place. After I had a little bit of foliage around, I started to use some trees, as I wanted to have a little bit more of a height in this biodome. I didn't want to go too crazy with like really large trees, as I feel like this does not really look super realistic if there's like ginormous trees in there. So I tried to find some that give a little bit of height to the whole area, but not too big, so it doesn't look weird that there's like a ginormous tree in there. And I did use these small trees with this really big root system. They are definitely coming from like a mangrove biome, but I feel like they still work quite well, also especially around body of waters. I do love to use this, and I absolutely love to raise it a little bit, or like place it really close to rocks, so the roots look like they are climbing over the rocks, and I just absolutely love this detail. And then I use some of the string trees. I already used them with like the Deinonychus habitat, and I feel like also the Lystrosaurus, I believe. So I have used this tree a couple of times in the zoo, and I actually do really like this one. And then for the last couple of details, I placed down some more foliage on the rocks close to the water barrier. I wanted to have like this little rock ledge, and then I decided to also make this a planter basically. So I placed down some soil so it does look a little bit more realistic as a planter, and then placed down a bunch of different foliage pieces that I was also using throughout the habitat. I especially use a ton of ferns. I also use these really big ferns that we have, as I am like quite rarely able to use them as they are really special, I would say, but in this one it did work quite well. And I also used a couple of like blooming flowers, as this is a plant bed and would not be disturbed too much by the dinosaurs, at least I hope so. So I feel like some blooming flowers would also look quite beautiful. And this was actually basically it for this habitat. It was actually relatively easy to do, and it didn't really take me too much time. I believe it was only like maybe 2 to 3ish hours, I would say. So this is definitely not that crazy of a build, even though it looks quite interesting, and is definitely a way to spice up your habitat builds by building these really interesting biodomes or generally walk through aviaries. And this is the finished result of the Pyroraptor biodome. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you liked the way I designed this habitat. Leave a like if you did, and don't forget to comment and guess what will be the second species on the second half of this biodome. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more videos that are about to come for Jurassic World Evolution 3. And I will now leave you with the last cinematic shots of this habitat so you can see the full finished result. I hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, bye guys!